The typical route is like money goes into Bitcoin and then maybe they learn a bit more and then it goes into ETH and it spreads throughout. Like money has to lead to Bitcoin. It's why when we talk about altcoin season, Bitcoin has to be healthy, ETH has to be healthy for altcoin season to go up.
I've heard you defend TikTok and you're like, no, TikTok's a great platform. It's educational, it's expanding. There's a lot of good stuff on it. It's a quick, easy way to learn. I mean, would you take the other side of this?
There's no divide in China between the Communist Party and businesses. They're like the same thing. So what we basically have is we've created a situation where the Communist Party just like is spying on everybody's phone in America.
Extending life is basically the same thing, like giving you more optionality. But then you also have to live today and like enjoy, squeeze the life out of like today, this moment.
Everybody, welcome to Alfalfa. Thank you so much for joining us. If it's your first time here, we are four radically moderate entrepreneurs trying to serve up some purple pills in investing, politics, and life in general. Today, we have a little agenda. We're going to talk about the Bitcoin conference. Arman Asadi, Crypto Kebab, was out last week because he was in Miami at the conference, so we're going to ask him about that. Yeah. We have a little policy talk regarding TikTok and some externalities regarding that. And then lastly, for the Life Alfalfa, Arman's going to tell us a story. He's going to read us a story. It's a Mexican fisherman parable he's going to read us. It's very short, but then we'll talk about it from there. Before we get into it though, quick notes, join the Discord, come hop in, talking a little DeFi, talk about questions that we want to answer in the podcast and other general crypto topics that come up midweek. And check out our friends at Collective Shift. The big dog, Ben Simpson, CEO, is in San Diego this week, so we're going to be hanging out with him tonight. Use code Alfalfa to check it out and get a little discount if you want to do that. So let's do first topic, Bitcoin conference in Miami. Two-part question, how was it? Second part, did you visit any venues that involved any prime numbers?
First of all, how about that intro?
Well done, Nicky boy.
That was so much better than me. Like I'm firing myself. Like that was a quick. You're fired.
I like your voice so
thank
much
you.
better.
Thank you.
Better voice.
Thank you. But I love that you gave me the agenda up front. Like as a listener, I'm pleased right now. So how was it? And prime numbers. No prime numbers this trip. Good. I think that's the Chamath question.
They accept
right?
ApeCoin, I think.
They do.
You have some
apparently. Of those. Put a deposit down on the residents. No prime numbers, but wow. So we all went to ETHDenver together, right? And I mean, 180 degrees, the complete opposite. Like I think we talked about this a little bit, but imagine you guys saw ETHDenver. So ETHDenver, and we talked about it in a previous episode. It was maybe 3 episodes ago. And that was a shit show. It was unorganized. It was totally volunteer run. There was no fee for the ticket. It took 4 hours to get in. It took another 3 hours to get into the venue. You know, it was insane. This was like walking into a Silicon Valley Salesforce conference. It was so different and well executed. I mean, I'm talking about, I couldn't tell whether I was it was like an Oracle event, a Salesforce event, huge Miami Beach Convention Center, lots of money everywhere. It was just a celebration of money and success is really what it felt like. It was like, we're number one. And, yeah.
Isn't that most people's, I guess, negative about it that they don't like? It's like, I don't want to see a bunch of douchebags just talking about how their bag's just pumped. But is that what it is, or did you learn things? No,
I didn't think it was that. I didn't actually mind it. But guess, I'm not a ETH maxi. ETH is my favorite coin and ecosystem and software. Like I look at it, they're all software to me, right? And they all have a reason to exist. But like I didn't look at it that way. I enjoyed the vibe. I thought the people that were there were like super cool, super friendly. It was a different energy. Like at ETHDenver, people want to talk about what they're building. They want to talk about the philosophy. At Bitcoin, they want to make deals. Like everyone wants to make deals and wants to make more money.
What type of deals are we talking
Venture
about?
deals, investment deals, partnership deals related to crypto in some format, maybe even outside of crypto. Just a lot of people with money, man. Like OG.
But not necessarily like involving Bitcoin specifically.
It could. Not necessarily because, what are you doing other than mining?
Right.
Like people are either mining or they were talking about the Lightning
So
Network. and the Strike
that's the
news.
thing I heard is that the Bitcoin mining companies were there in
Huge.
a massive presence because there's a handful of publicly traded mining companies. And so were they big sponsors? Were they splashing around sponsorship dollars everywhere? Was that pretty obvious? When you got
Yeah.
there?
So at ETHDenver, right, the show area, the expo area was just like so basic, right? It was just like these little booths and each company had like t-shirts and a couple snacks. This was like robots and, just a whole different level. Like there was one company that had like their podcast happening live on a stage.
Could have been us,
like in the middle of a huge convention center. Another one was like had their mining rig. There's multiple like
Bitmain or whatever.
There were so many. And then actually one of the coolest things that I saw was the New York Stock Exchange, the bull.
Mm-hmm.
So there was like a Bitcoin bull that
Saw
somebody
that.
built. Yeah,
Looked awesome.
it was awesome.
Was it missing anything?
It had no balls.
It had no balls.
No.
It was a beautiful thing.
It's a robot bull.
It was a robot bull.
Cool.
Really makes you think.
So were you taken by anything that made you more or less bullish on Bitcoin itself?
One of the things that was interesting is like nobody brought up any other coin, and the speakers would even like have this like funny thing where if they needed to refer to it, it was like, I'm talking about the coin that shall not be named.
That ETH coin?
So even though there was this like huge focus on Bitcoin in the talks and in the conference, it was almost like a rule. I felt like the conversations and where all the alpha is always outside of the conference. It's at the events, it's at the happy hours, it's at the parties. That's the way we typically roll, right? And outside the conference, there was no like Bitcoin maxi talk happening. It was just, I'm passionate about crypto, I work in crypto, I'm building in crypto, let's make deals together. So it made me walk away from it going like, this is an important event to be at because of the auxiliary events and the people that attend. So even though it's a Bitcoin event, I think it's really important to be at. For me, at least, I really enjoyed it.
So no Bitcoin alpha.
I mean, there was a lot of interesting announcements. A lot of companies made.
Yeah, can we talk about a few of those?
Yeah,
Sounds like,
I mean, you were reading about the Strike announcement.
yeah.
before this.
So Strike is a company that's trying to facilitate cheap, instant global transactions using, and they describe it as using Bitcoin technology.
They're
So-
not trying. They're doing it.
Yeah, they're doing it.
Where you can use Bitcoin to pay for things.
Right, where the merchants, I think, and this is where I get a little confused. Like, are they accepting Bitcoin? I know they can accept US dollars, so maybe it transacts.
Strike just uses the Bitcoin network to settle the payments. It doesn't actually involve transferring Bitcoin. Like you can send me like dollars, you can send like British pounds. And it basically uses the Bitcoin network to kind of swap those immediately. Like initially it was using Tether. I don't know if it's still using Tether. But it's like an interesting application because it's this idea of Bitcoin being sort of like a settlement network, right? The idea that you don't actually need to possess or take on any exchange risk with the Bitcoin. You can use the network purely to just send cash.
And is this on the Lightning Network, which is Bitcoin's layer 2? We talked about layer 2's the ETH a lot, but like,
have you used Strike?
I haven't. I was just looking at it before we started recording, and they have a mobile app and whatnot, but I haven't played with it.
It's pretty impressive.
It's impressive.
Like it's just money
Instant.
sent. Instant.
But it's not instant when I send Bitcoin to someone. So like, how is it
Lightning.
Okay, so on the layer 2, it's
On the
instant.
layer two.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a rumor going around that Strike was going to announce like that they were partnering with Apple Pay
Yeah,
or something.
that was the big rumor.
But that never materialized, right?
It's still a good announcement.
But
right?
so they announced Shopify, Stripe, and a handful of others, like some McDonald's, some major retailers. Which I think Stripe is the most important one because Stripe Payments kind of is like the underlying processor for things like Uber and Lyft and all kinds of other like apps we use every day.
I mean, the implications of it are like potentially crazy, right? Because when you're doing these credit card payments, it's like 3%, 3%, 3%, sometimes more, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a merchant, and I think you use Strike or Lightning to take payments, it's like nothing. Or
So-
if you're like Apple, right, and you're doing billions and billions of like Apple Pay transfers via like if like people are using credit cards for stuff like that, like if you're Apple, you could just pocket that and it would be like the customer would see no difference. Like be like,
I mean, I play the role as a merchant, and I see it on our P&L. 3 to 4% of your revenue, of your gross revenue, just goes to credit card processing, which is not fun.
So let me step in the shoes of like Apple payments. Like, you wouldn't want to tie yourself to one exclusively, right? You would want to be able to use the Lightning Network and use Bitcoin rails, but then you'd also probably want to be able to settle on layer 2 of another chain or whatever, right? Like, you'd want to be able to like just process payments of all sorts.
Yeah, it seems like Jack Mahler, who runs Strike, is just turning into a business development machine. And I think there'll be equivalents. I watched a little YouTube video by Peter Thiel. Some funny moments in that. If you want,
He was fired up.
He was quite fired up.
You see that live?
No.
He named the enemies of Bitcoin. And he also kind of had this weird analogy of like comparing ETH to Visa in terms of valuation, which I thought was like, I usually respect most of his perspectives, but that seemed a little weird to pigeonhole ETH as like relative to the Visa network. But yeah, he talked about that, there will certainly be payment processing going on using crypto and hopefully without the fees. As a merchant, I would love that. The question I have is when it comes to consumers, like, let's be honest, Bitcoin and ETH are speculative assets right now. We buy them and own them because we think they're going to go up. So if I think they're going to go up, why would I ever want to spend my Bitcoin? And maybe this is speaking as a US resident. It might be different in other countries, but why would I want to give someone my Bitcoin if I think it's going to go up 20x over the next, 8-10 years?
I have no interest in that. Yeah.
Right. So are we just, building things to build and, maybe the demand will fill in later?
I think that benefit is different in another country, right?
El Salvador as an example.
Yeah, just any other country where like even just making payments to employees in other countries, right? By the time they were receiving it a few years ago, the volatility made it so that, by lunchtime they may have lost 20%. And so, but it's still allowed for a lot of companies and businesses here to send money to people abroad without middlemen. Like that's the whole point, right? But today I think that the effect of that is going to be a lot different. Like being able to actually do that for people abroad is a lot different than what is here for us. It's like this gold that we don't want to let go of.
Yeah.
Over there, it's a totally different story.
I put up a little QR code accepting ETH at a recent art show. No one paid me in ETH, and someone passed by and was like, "I'm not giving you my ETH." That was a joke. And I was like, "All right, it's fair enough. Just trying. Trying is my best." But I think I would like the future to be like a stable coin that I use,
Right.
And maybe it's backed by Bitcoin. That seems like reasonable at some point in the future. But like, it'd be nice if it was instant without the fees, but it was a stable coin where there's no volatility risk from me as a consumer, and I'm sure the merchant appreciates it too. So I don't know. Maybe it evolves into that, but Bitcoin doesn't have a decentralized exchange. They don't have like stable coins. They don't have these things don't exist. So I find it hard to like see further past these really cool business announcements and partnerships. But one step, I guess the step has to happen before we move to the next one.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Did you guys see any of Michael Saylor's clips, moments, anything?
I've actually seen like nothing from this conference, so
No?
anything you can tell me would be much appreciated.
I don't know how to summarize things, but Michael Saylor's more bullish than ever.
More bullshit.
More bullish than ever. I mean, it's the first thing he said when he got on stage. He was like, can you do his voice, Steven? Everyone keeps asking me. You do the best.
I don't know if I
Michael
can
Saylor.
follow up that.
Everyone keeps asking me, am I still bullish on, I can't do him. Am I still bullish in the hallways? Like, he was the number one question he was getting. And he was like, let me just address that right away. Like, I'm more bullish than ever. Like, the hot take that he had, which of course is no secret, was him just directly addressing regulation. And he was just like, look, like, number one question I get, are you still bullish on Bitcoin? He's like, fuck yeah, I'm bullish. Number two question, like, what do you want to do about all this regulation? And he embraces it wholeheartedly. He's like, this is so good. This is exactly what we want. There should be absolutely no fear. The part that I think that's most interesting about Michael Saylor, I was mentioning this to Nick. We were talking about this, right? I think in the office. I was like, somebody has to be the visionary leader of this. And somebody has to be the big bull with the balls. And he, through his words and through his actions and through his behavior and his beliefs, is paving the path for Bitcoin. I think the role he plays is much more important than people realize. This advocate who puts his money where his mouth is, who tells everyone to be calm when they're worried, and who tells everyone to get excited when they're also worried about the market. It's an incredibly important role, and I really actually I haven't listened to him a lot before this, but I admire him way more than
He also
than I
tells
ever did.
everybody to take a mortgage out on their house and buy Bitcoin.
I mean, he's going to be either really right or really wrong, and I'm pretty
It's worth
sure
the
he's going to
risk.
be really right.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're going to look
They
at
just
back
bought
and
another 200 million. The
Yeah.
other day
I mean,
at the
I've heard
top,
about
as usual.
I've heard about people taking like concentrated bets, and that's like, you know, it seems risky, but it's more risky not to take concentrated bets. I typically don't, but I mean, this guy shoved in, you know, $500 million of cash in his own company, then borrowed money to put in more, and then in his personal stack put in more. I mean, this guy is like concentrated.
Who's buying more Bitcoin now, Saylor or Do Kwon?
It's a good question. I don't know what the rankings are.
The MicroStrategy has like 3.5 billion, I think now.
Yeah.
Doe's
Doe's
trying to get up to.
allegedly
He's trying to get up to 10.
Buying 10 billion
Potentially.
potentially.
Yeah.
I think he's at 1 or
3.
half.
Yeah.
3.
I mean,
Maybe.
this is like the only real like hope I think for Bitcoin in the somewhat near future is that every like large entities like this just keep acquiring as a sort of like treasury asset. It's this like thing that just sort of increases in value generally with the dollar over sort of like long periods of time. Like when Saylor talks about why MicroStrategy is buying Bitcoin, it like kind of it makes a lot of sense when he says it, you know.
But like these actions buoy the entire crypto market, right? Like aren't like we're all benefiting even if we're not fully in Bitcoin because Bitcoin is being propped up and that will like support all crypto assets.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, well, I think so. I mean, like the typical route is like money goes into Bitcoin and then maybe they learn a bit more and then it goes into ETH and it spreads throughout. Like money has to lead into Bitcoin. It's why when we talk about altcoin season, Bitcoin has to be healthy, ETH has to be healthy for altcoin season to go up. I do recommend listening to an interview that he does, Michael Saylor with, I think it's on the Up Only podcast. They go on like 100 different tangents, but like there's this one section
That's a good one, yeah.
where they're like, why not ETH? Like, why not these other items? And for him, he talks about himself as a fiduciary, as a officer of a publicly traded company. And to him, he looks at Bitcoin as the only one that is okay if you're managing a security, you know, is okay to buy. That he thinks the government has said this is an asset. It's not a security. And he thinks it's the safest for him to buy. And he's just saying, yes, these other things may be good, but like for me and for my investors to not get sued and not go to jail, this is the one I feel safe to buy. So I'm giving other people the playbook.
It's pretty easy to interpret that as bullish, either for Bitcoin or for altcoins, actually.
Right. Did you get, I saw this like little, like, I don't know, 30-second clip. I don't know if you guys saw it, but there's, you know, 4 Bitcoin maxis up on stage and they go, raise your hand if you own ETH. And like you, from the camera view, all you see is these hands go up and like just the stage is get out of here. Like, what are you doing here? Like,
God.
and so I think that's the case. Like that's where we sit in the middle, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, the purple pill of this is not maxi one or the other. It's like they both serve good purposes and parts of your portfolio and it's okay to hold both. But,
It's more
you know,
than
I think
okay.
Michael Saylor has like a specific reason he only owns one.
Right.
Right.
But-
And I mean, like you could just as easily make the other argument from like an ESG perspective, though, right? Like Bitcoin, it's like a huge liability for it, whether or not you think ESG is bullshit, whether or not you think mining is or isn't green.
Sure. Maybe just on the narrative.
Yeah, because like when ETH2 comes out, right? ETH's going to be ESG friendly, and ETH's going to be like really the first crypto that actually institutions can buy. Like I don't think large institutions can really buy Bitcoin right now because of the ESG thing, and I don't know if that's being properly weighed in right now.
What's
I forgot what that
price.
stood for, but I'm just going to say environmental, social, and governance criteria.
Yeah, big trend in institutional investing to just kind of be on a side of clean energy, green.
It's also, I think it
the current thing.
It's a funny thing because you say ESG, but the entirety of it is the E. Like nobody actually cares about the S or the G usually.
Yeah.
But don't you think, God, the name is escaping me, but it's something about capturing the flaring from oil rigs and using it to mine Bitcoin instead of releasing it, like capturing that energy, using it to mine Bitcoin. And maybe I think there will be one of the benefits of using a Bitcoin mining rig is that you can take it portably to any like remote destination, a river in some third world country, a solar farm out in West Texas, and use it to subsidize the building of sustainable energy. And so if they can do a good job of marketing this
is our episode 1 of Alfalfa.
Right.
We've talked about like why Bitcoin actually incentivizes sustainable energy
so
as well.
Maybe this ETH merge pushes Bitcoin to be like, okay, we need to get this message out there. We need to push a little harder. Once ETH goes proof of stake, that'd be fun. And I think it'd be good progress in general.
Yeah, agreed. But yeah, overall, cool conference. I would go again.
10 out of 10 would recommend?
I would. I liked the people that were there. There's talk of like toxic types of people in the Bitcoin community. I think every cult has their toxic
Bitcoiners
people in it.
Very toxic.
Yeah, and are known for like this extreme toxicity. But I don't know, maybe just because I wasn't around those people, I wasn't exposed to them, I was exposed to the right people. Maybe I got lucky. I enjoyed myself. I met a lot of great people.
People are also just nicer in real life as a general rule too.
Yeah, no, that's super true. But you know what we didn't do is our alfalfa round.
I know. You congratulated me on an intro and I just forgot the alfalfa
Full botch.
It was actually a full botch.
We should still do it. Let's still do it.
Oh, you want to
Is
do it
it
now?
too late?
It's kind of too
We're
late.
completely out of order.
Yeah, we're just out of sync,
Agenda's
out of
just
order.
thrown off. There's no alfalfa this
the
week.
moment's passed. No alfalfa for you this week.
All right.
Moving on.
Nick's the dictator this week. I like this.
I guess.
I love this.
I'm just here for the ride this week.
Yeah, everyone had a little drink last night. Stephen had
Yeah.
+1, N +1.
And this one.
N +1 drinks.
Hope nobody watches this.
All right, so
on
what's
YouTube.
this next one? We're going to talk a little TikTok, and it's in the policy section. And I guess we're wondering, should the U.S. government take any policy actions against TikTok? There was a Wall Street Journal article talking about TikTok branding and how TikTok specifically, more so than say Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, is particularly good at firing dopamine responses. And it kind of had this part of the article where it talked about long will we remember the days when our kids just used to watch 2-minute videos of cartoons on YouTube, and now all they watch is 7-second clips on TikTok. So we think we're ADD now, and TikTok has somewhat, shortened the attention span of kids and probably adults too. And I think most people, when they try TikTok for the first time, or maybe on the third or fourth, they realize like there is something about this that is particularly addicting. And I think the thing about their algorithm that's public is that they don't not only look at the type of content that you interact with, that you like, that you comment on, but they look at how long you view a certain topic and kind of use that to grade your interest in a topic and then show you more about that. And it's nothing but short videos. There are some longer
They
content
recently
pieces.
upped it to 10 minutes.
Right.
I don't think those videos are going to succeed.
Right.
But
and so
it's interesting that
we
they
were
did
joking
that.
before we started this recording. Is like, so obviously China, this is a Chinese-owned entity. There is a TikTok US, but let's be honest, it's still Chinese-owned. I'm sure the US company has US servers, but if you want to go down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole, China has control of all the data, and maybe they have a ulterior motive with the data. Maybe they have an ulterior motive with just
The
getting people
algorithm.
addicted to
Yeah.
things or understanding the algorithm. So yeah, I mean,
Is this a big ruse? Is this a big ruse to make America dumber? Is this like
This is a fun right-wing conspiracy. It's
Okay.
it's a cool one.
What
that
is
I
the
came across.
conspiracy?
The conspiracy is literally that this is China's like grand plan to turn us into like twerkers and idiots and sitting around doing absolutely nothing for hours scrolling while they feed their society math and physics and engineering and things that are going to accelerate them in the new economy, and they're just going to pass us by without us even realizing it, and utilize this social media platform and their algorithm to distract us while they accelerate. It's a very interesting. It's interesting because I don't think it's like. I think that's like. A better way to put it is I don't think it's. I can't say for sure it's not true, but it doesn't sound right. But even if it's not right, even if it's not true, it is the truth.
You would say it's working.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like even if it's on accident,
if it's not their intent, it's working.
Our kids are twerking and doing stupid stuff, and they're not. Like that is true. So I think, like I have actually heard. I'm curious your take on this, Eric. Is like I've heard you defend TikTok, and you're like, no, TikTok's a great platform. It's educational. It's expanding. There's a lot of good stuff on it. It's a quick, easy way to learn. I mean, would you take the other side of this?
So I have a take. I do have a take. And the take is, well, first of all, my fiance, God bless her, she's like a TikTok digester. And like sometimes in bed, I'll like one eye catches some of these videos as they roll through. And then like now my whole body's turning. And then like, I'm like, hold on, play that one. So I know it works. My take is that it's larger. It's about education. And like the way that we were all raised, education tells us like, hey, there's this like authority that wants to give you what we perceive to be the right answer, okay? And then like we regurgitate what the right answer is, and we get an A for doing that, okay? So if that's our like action response, then to optimize that, we want to get the answer as quick as possible. And TikTok gives you the 7-second answer when something else YouTube gives you a 10-minute answer. So like for me, I think like, well, they are more efficient at giving you the answer. And like the answer could be like how to braise a pork shoulder or something. And like TikTok will do it very quickly. And you know, like a blog will tell you about, this woman's going to tell you about her day first before she gets down to the recipe.
With a bunch of ads.
With a bunch of ads in between. So that's my take on it. I don't necessarily know if that's right or wrong. I'm not really a user. But they do everything much quicker.
There's a lot of negatives in the platform, but there's also a lot of positives. So a few of the negatives that I think are obviously, each one of these could be an hour-long discussion. But a few of the negatives are, obviously this is killing attention span, right? Like people just simply, if you don't hook them in the first 3 seconds, they're gone. And so in general, everything is becoming more and more loud, attention-seeking, and high energy, intense sort of like clickbait to capture an audience in the first place, to get your attention. And like in order to become an influencer, which is like the new doctor, engineer, lawyer, like every kid, number one job that a career that a child wants is YouTuber, TikToker. So they have to play the game better than anybody, and they're learning that to play that game, they have to hack their way to being the best clickbait artist that they possibly can and give people what they want, not necessarily what they want to create. Like you get a lot of people stuck in a hamster wheel doing unfulfilling shit just because they want to make a living being a superstar on the internet. So I think there's a lot of negatives and a lot of sadness that's going to come out of it. But on the other hand, the good part is that we're becoming more hyper efficient at learning. Like when you have to create content that is that digestible, what that ultimately does is, yes, it makes people lazy. Yes, it's hurting their reading and writing capabilities, and they prefer video. But it's interesting because like people are processing a lot faster now, and people are learning to discover and create shortcuts. What used to be a 2-hour-long video on YouTube with a carpenter has become a 30-second reel or TikTok to give you the same thing. So yes, we're seeking the information more quickly, but we're also learning much more fast than we ever used to.
I mean,
that's one positive.
The future I look forward to is when you're Neo and they plug into the Matrix and you upload jujitsu and you're like, you wake up and you're like, I know jujitsu.
So this is an iteration
this
towards
is
that.
maybe like step 2 out of like 2000.
I mean, like if you're going to give a presentation in front of an audience, you're going to try to capture their attention first as well. TikTok is going to do that too with some freaking dance. And like, I think there's a lot of similarities.
Are creators making money off this? Because I kind of like think about the job economy in general when I think about these large platforms growing, and I watch some of these videos and I'm like, this is a highly choreographed, well thought out took a lot of time. Like, what incentive does this person beyond attention have?
I think they're definitely making a living. Yeah.
Okay.
The big creators
I know they
make
are.
enormous sums
Yeah.
of money.
I don't think you need. So first of all, the interesting thing about TikTok in this day and age, like this moment, is that we're still in this moment with the algorithm where you can blow up. And the most organic views come from TikTok right now over everything, and Instagram Reels. But like, you can become an influencer basically in like 3 months by just posting like 4 times a day. So that's really interesting. So let's just say in 3 months you have 100,000 followers, which is totally doable. My friend, shout out to my friend Jenny Chang. I watched her go from 0 to 500,000 in like a span of a few months. And she's at, last I checked, she was at a couple million or something like
Wow.
that. I mean, just doing like funny shit. Like, she's funny, and it's like, she does like sexual videos. It's a whole thing. And it's a whole thing. You should check her out. Point is,
What's the handle?
like, I asked her, like, I forget what I was trying to do at the time, but I was like, I had a client who wanted to promote on TikTok, and I was like, oh, Jenny would be a great fit, and let me go get her pricing. I was impressed. Like, I don't want to reveal Jenny's pricing, in the episode, but let's just say it was like thousands.
Right. Notable.
And I was like, whoa, like, good for you. How many of these you doing? A lot of them. Okay, you only need a handful of those a month to make a living.
I mean, Steven might be there soon because, like, on our Alfalfa podcast TikTok, the best yields in DeFi video is getting some play. You're at 660 views already.
Well, I was going to say that. Like,
Wow.
Alfalfa podcast, we do like educational stuff. We do long form content, and our long form stuff doesn't get nearly the views that our Instagram Reels are
Clips,
getting
Reels.
or
Yeah.
our TikTok's getting.
Super true. So the question is that because that's what people want, or is that because that's what the algorithm is pushing because what people
You guys
want?
are also like, you have to downgrade a view on TikTok, right? Like, the reason everybody gets millions of views on TikTok is because all the videos are 5 seconds long.
Right.
And then people watch like 20 times as many videos as they watch like on YouTube, right? Like, a lot of YouTube videos are like 10, 15 minutes long. If TikTok's like 5 seconds long and people are scroll, it's like, yeah, you're getting followers, you're getting like all these views, but like, they're not as quality as like a view. Like, somebody who watches like one of your 10-minute YouTube videos is not the same as somebody who watches one of your like 7-second TikToks.
The coolest part is that the dopamine's happening both ways.
Yes. I was saying, what a great flywheel effect.
The dopamine
Yeah.
for the creator. Like, that's why people keep showing up on TikTok.
But
and
that's why
Instagram.
it's just so like Black Mirror-y. Like, it literally reminds me of the Black Mirror episode where everybody's just running on the treadmills trying to like get these like items to like kind of flex in front of all the other people who are running on the treadmills trying to get the items, and it's like, I don't know, it just feels gross to me. I hesitate to criticize TikTok because I feel like I'm like, the boomers with the you kids and your rock and roll music,
I mean,
This could be what this is.
But if you do believe that Alfalfa, us, are giving actual valuable information, is it valuable that they find us on TikTok? And maybe as like the even as like the first part of the-
I hear all the points that it's great, like we're forcing people to make information more digestible and we can learn faster, and I think that's true. But the reality of what I see when people use TikTok, right, and everybody's always like, oh no, I use it for makeup tips and stuff, and sure, I don't doubt that that's happening, but like what I mostly see is people just mindlessly scrolling, trying to be entertained by other people, trying to like dance and get kind of like love and affection and clicks and stuff. And I fail to see how that's like long-term productive for society. Like, there's a reason why China basically doesn't let the kids use TikTok or like heavily
Or video games.
restricts all of this stuff because it's probably not productive to a degree to just be on this like hamster wheel of like dancing and scrolling. And
So let's go back to the
no
policy.
way it's productive. There's no way it's actually like net.
Well,
positive.
we're doomed.
Have you read any of Jonathan Haidt's stuff?
No.
Like, the coddling of the American mind. He
the
writes
coddler.
He writes about this a lot. Like, we can speculate. Is it good? Is it bad? Like, we have a lot of like objective data now, right? And like, one of the scariest points of data is like the rate of like depression and like suicide in teens, and it's way up. Like, we're talking up like 3, 4, 5, 6, 700%, something crazy like that in like the last like decade
Terrifying.
or so.
Yep.
Like, this stuff is
Bullying
just
is
like,
up. The bullying causes the depression and the suicide. Yep. The whole thing.
like it's I feel like giving TikTok to like a 12-year-old girl is like giving crack to a crack addict, right? Like when you're like a 12-year-old girl, your brain is so like wired to just be hyper aware of your social situation and to get like love and acceptance from your peers and everything like that. And we're just like pouring like gasoline on a fire with this stuff. There's a lot of kids out there who are just feel terrible.
And it doesn't matter how famous they get. Like the more famous they get death threats now.
The more they rely on it, or
yeah. Well, the more it can affect them, because like when they're like, it doesn't resolve the problem to get famous. Is because they think if only I could just get famous, all my dreams would come true. But then they get famous and they have much bigger problems. And I don't think they ever signed up for those in the first place at all.
So I think this is back to the original policy question. This is the first time that I think we're getting a little bit of our own medicine, because the U.S. is one of the greatest exports beyond the culture and like the way we form our government and democracy is technology, like Google, Facebook, very ubiquitous technology platforms that are used across the world if they're not straight up banned. And we have another country's social platform kind of being spread throughout, organically throughout our own population.
This was Trump's concern, right?
Right. And I think he was trying to work some kind of buyout between the U.S. entity and Oracle, some kind of weird, deal that never went through. But I guess, how do we feel about that? That, there's another country which has the data and has the control. Other countries, European countries have been used to Facebook, Google, Amazon kind of being the market leader in so many different categories and in life. I think, just to give my quick take on it is the how information is disseminated. I think that's like what, as the U.S. or any country is concerned about, is, if I'm German government official, I'm looking at how our elections are shaped and how information about our elections are shaped. There's this other platform controlled by another country that our citizens love and use all day, and their kind of algorithm rules decide how information is decided, what's true and what's not. And that kind of concerns me. Not that even the US has control over that, even though they're US born companies and technologies, but I don't know, that would be generally the concern, is I guess manipulating the way information is disseminated.
It's like insane to me. Like there's no divide in China between the Communist Party and businesses. They're like the same thing. So what we basically have is we've created a situation where the Communist Party just like is spying on everybody's phone in America, right? Which is kind of terrifying. I don't understand the upside of this, right? It's not like if we nuked TikTok, like some American like company wouldn't come in and just like kind of create the same thing. True. Anyway, I get you'd be kind of ruining a lot of people's livelihoods at this point, which does suck, but like literally having like a back door for like a somewhat evil regime on everybody's phone seems terrible, right? And as you said, like the fact that they can kind of control what shows up on the algorithm, right? You can influence like actual changes in society,
mass
right?
populations.
Like this is going to be like somewhat of a spurious like conclusion, right? But like there's a reason, for example, like that the rate of like transgenderism is up like 4,000% in the last decade or so, and it's not just because everybody just feels comfortable now, and I'm sure to a degree people are more comfortable and they're coming out. But there's a social contagion going on there, right? So, and I think a lot of it does have to do with TikTok, like
this financial incentives, or was that fake news?
Like, the Palm Desert thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like TikTok rewards this type of content. It rewards it with engagement, right? And you create this like feedback loop where people, you get more of the behavior that you incentivize via the algorithm and people's reaction to that content, right? So you actually get like changes in the way that people who use the platform behave, people, the way they think. It's just like a very dangerous it just seems like infinite asymmetric downside and no upside, right? Which is
I agree.
Like
I don't know if I agree. I mean, I think the ultimate thing we need to be able to do still is like critically analyze data. We're probably losing that with like the really short form TikTok type videos. But if you can look at those as exposure, and then long form stuff still exists, then maybe you like start with the TikTok, and then you like, if you want to dig deeper, well, you can go. There's other avenues. I would hope that's the case. I would hope that like
No, you're bringing up
I'm not against
good
like
point.
I'm not against like the nature of TikTok existing, even if I may think it's like bad for society as a whole. What I'm saying is like, why let the Chinese government do it? You know,
I don't know if a U.S. entity is any better at it, though. The only difference is that we think we should trust a U.S. entity more, but everything has showed us that we have the same problems with U.S. entities that we do with the Chinese one. It's just that the Chinese one isn't us.
There's
so it's foreign to
way,
us.
way more accountability.
No,
with like a US corporation
there for
versus,
sure is.
You know.
But I'm just playing a devil's advocate point that like they're all doing the same thing. I think Nick's point is the most important there, where it's like the control of information and the narrative that each one of these platforms creates, but then does this like hands off, well, what's my role in free speech kind of like take is bullshit. Like these platforms, we've talked about this a lot, like how important it is for them to be accountable and objective and allow for some level of free speech. And we decided not to talk about Twitter today and what Elon Musk is doing, but that's a big piece of this. It's a big piece of like what we're talking about. If Elon Musk is able to take one of these platforms that is like a virtual town square that the companies before were saying, well, these are private companies, we can ban who we want, we can do whatever we want, we can control what we want, we can say this should be censored if we want, and he eliminates that, and he does make it as like objective as possible. That's interesting. That then means that he's putting the freedom of thought and narrative and creation of that narrative back in the hands of the individuals. That's powerful. China isn't doing that, and the U.S. entities aren't doing that. That's why I think what Elon is hopefully doing with Twitter is huge, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this also, and this may just be a story, but like I think China's pretty good at facial recognition software. And if I'm a intelligence agency, say in China, and I think there's this really strong counterintelligence like aspect to it, where if you can literally process all the facial recognition that comes through your servers, imagine that like there's certain people that start off using TikTok as teenagers and they use them as young adults, and then maybe one of those people ends up in working in the military or in the government, or maybe in some kind of intelligence service. Like you have data on that person, dating back for the last 10 years of their life. And I believe they have the capabilities to do that. And I think they're in the long game. And, I've certainly read articles, and maybe they're deep down my little algorithm on the internet, but there's certain benefits to collecting data and collecting email addresses and everything they possibly can, so that, they could find people who end themselves up in positions of influence and use that information to, kind of, I don't know, move them, thwart them, bribe them, whatever. And that's never been capable before. So that's my little conspiracy story that I think is certainly interesting. And if I was in an intelligence agency, I would be sucking up all that data and tracking everyone over a long period of time.
And like, of course they're doing that.
Yeah,
of course they're doing that. Like they're obviously doing that. There's 0% chance that they're not doing that. That the with the stuff they already do over there, the odds that they're just not like
they're doing it on their own citizens. So like
I forgot where I saw this, but somebody was saying that like they looked into like the TikTok app, and it was just so egregious, like what it actually did on your phone and what it was doing with your data and like access to all your stuff. It was like far more egregious than any other app that exists. You got to understand this thing. It's probably listening to us right now.
Probably.
It's just recording everything everybody says and parsing it in a database somewhere. It's
Do you think they're gonna hear Armand's storytelling time? They might be listening.
Is that your way of segueing us?
Yeah, what do we got next?
So
tell us a story.
We can tell the story, but I think we should set the stage. So like, I think one of the most important topics that we all talk, like we talk a lot about crypto all the time, right? But if there's a why underneath it all that always comes up, it's like, is it about crypto or is it about the money? And it's typically about the money. But is it because of the money? No, it's because of what the money provides. And what does the money provide? Freedom. choice, the ability to move up the hierarchy of needs, right? And even think about something like meaning and fulfillment. Because you have to take care of like your base level needs, and freedom and wealth allows you to do that. So then we get into these conversations often, right, where we ask each other like, all right, we're starting another business, you know, why? Is it worth it? What's the goal? Do I have enough? What is enough? And it's a really interesting question. And it's funny because a lot of the people in our Alfalfa community and Discord have been asking us this. And shout out to Liquidiate, one of our listeners who directly asked, like, what is your guys' like relationship with wealth and freedom and your approach to that? Because we have, you know, between us and individually, like, we're already in the 0.01% of humanity, like just even being American, like you would say, like you're a 1%er just when you're American, right? Now when you're making over a decent level of income over, you know, let's just call it like 6 figures in America, like now you're in a tiny percent of people that have more than enough money to be okay forever. So I think they've studied like really interesting, I think Nick, you brought this up one time, that like the threshold of going from poverty to a middle class salary of say like $60,000 a year, the increase in points in happiness and fulfillment is like massive. It's like an order of magnitude almost. But when you go from like 60,000 to 150,000 or 150,000 to like 1 million, it's almost nothing. And it's really interesting because it's basically saying that all the cherries on top that come after end up changing nothing for you in terms of how you feel and how happy you are. So it's just I'm just kind of setting the stage to say like this is just a question that we often think about, and I think it's important to not get trapped in this idea of like the moving goalpost. And we all do that. And actually, I think one of the best quotes is the one, Eric, we've talked about from Psychology of Money. That's part of this conversation too. Can we pull that up? Do you remember it?
Is that the story?
Yeah.
It's like author Kurt Vonnegut was at a party.
Yeah.
Is that the one?
That's the one. Do you remember it?
Yeah. Let me try to paraphrase. So Kurt Vonnegut was at a party of some hedge fund manager in New York, and he was talking to another author, the guy who wrote Fahrenheit 451.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember what the guy's name is.
Yeah.
And so it's 2 authors who don't have as much money as these hedge fund managers, and they're talking about like how lavish this party is and talking about wealth. And one guy looks at the other guy. He goes, well, do you realize that this hedge fund manager made more money in one day than you did from your entire royalties and book sales off of Fahrenheit 451? And Kurt Vonnegut goes, or, you know, the author goes, yeah, I do realize that. But I have one thing he'll never have: enough.
Dude, it's fire. So where is enough? And so I think the conversation for this segment should just be like exploring that idea a little bit, and like what is enough for each person and why we do what we do. Do we do it because we're trying to get enough, or do we do it for the pursuit? Do we do it for the journey? What is enough for each of us? So I'll read this, another example of like this Mexican, it's called the parable of the Mexican fisherman. So yeah, sit back for a little story time. This is about 1 minute long, and I will kind of try to read it fast, but I do think like for the listeners, the first time I heard this, the first time most of us heard this, it was profound.
It's an incredible story.
So, the Mexican fisherman and the investment banker, author unknown. An American investment banker was at the pier of a small coastal Mexican village. This is so weird to read a story. At the small coastal Mexican village when a small boat with just one fisherman docked. Inside the small boat were several large yellowfin tuna. The American complimented the Mexican on the quality of his fish and asked how long it took to catch them. The Mexican replied, only a little while. The American then asked why he didn't stay out longer and catch more fish. The Mexican said he had enough to support his family's immediate needs. The American then asked, but what do you do with the rest of your time? The fisherman said, I sleep late, fish a little, play with my children, take siestas with my wife Maria, and stroll into the village each evening where I sip wine, play the guitar with my amigos. I have a full and busy life. The American scoffed. I have an MBA from Harvard and can help you, he said. You should spend more time fishing, and with the proceeds, buy a bigger boat. With the proceeds from the bigger boat, you could buy several boats, and eventually you could have a fleet of fishing boats. Instead of selling your catch to middlemen, you could sell directly to the processor, eventually opening up your own cannery. You could control the product processing and distribution, he said. Of course, you would need to leave this small coastal fishing village and move to Mexico City, then LA, and then New York City, where you will run your expanding enterprise. The Mexican fisherman asked, but how long will this all take? To which the American replied, 15 to 20 years or so. And the Mexican said, but then what? The American laughed and said, that's the best part. When the time was right, you would announce an IPO and sell your company stock to the public and become very rich. You would make millions. The Mexican said, millions? Then what? The American said, then you could retire. You could move to a small coastal fishing village where you could sleep late, fish a little, play with your kids, take siestas with your wife, and stroll to the village in the evenings where you could sip wine and play guitar with your amigos.
Yes, good read. That didn't take as long as I thought. That was beautiful.
All right.
I like stories.
That was a great story. Okay, so we talk about this all the time. We think about this in our daily lives. We talk about it every time we get together.
Do we dismiss it sometimes?
I think we do. I think we're all playing sort of this like Harvard MBA guy, and we're also playing the fisherman guy simultaneously. But where do we land? Where do we land on the idea? That's the key question. And it goes back to the original point is like, well, how much is enough?
Yeah.
And if it is enough, what would you be doing anyway?
Right. Nick had to throw that in because Nick wants to build businesses and that's it.
It's a good point, and I think each of us has a pretty different take on this. Like, this might be one where it's interesting. Like, I would like to hear what each of you guys, like, truly personally think, because there is the Mexican fisherman to me is a very individual preference story.
Like
your fishing and my fishing are very different things.
Like what is your version of fishing
Yeah.
and walking through town and playing music with your amigos?
And another part of it is like how honest we're being with ourselves about are we actually being the MBA guy when we could be the fisherman?
Well, I think Steven made a point early in our podcasting to say that like even if you had $10 billion, you would still be doing this podcast.
Did he say that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe not on the podcast. Maybe
Yeah, I don't just do this for the millions a month.
For the 900 TikTok views.
Wow.
660. All right, let's tone it down.
All right, you go, Eric.
Man, I don't want to go first, but I do have a pretty clear idea of what my version of fishing is, and
You played Torrey Pines twice this week.
I played golf twice this week. These are weekdays in the afternoons, mid-afternoons. So I tend to think that I go fishing a lot. You know, my version of fishing, I live that life. But, you know, I also think that, like, it takes a blend. Our friend Marcus, when we brought it up on one of our Wednesday meetings, he said, like, if you go too far on one path or the other, you're going to feel unfulfilled. So, like, even if you go, like, fishing all day, meaning, like, playing golf, Torrey Pines all day, like you're gonna feel a little bit of this itch to be like, wow, shit, I should be like utilizing my faculties a little more, you know, and you just can't go one way or the other. I think it has to be a blend.
One aspect that stands out for me, this isn't my full like take on this or anything, but one thing that a problem I have with the Mexican fisherman parable. A human being that isn't experiencing a certain level of suffering and challenge in life goes into atrophy. And I don't think I could ever be a full-time fisherman, personally. I do think I could enjoy my life in terms of like surrounding myself with more hobbies and filling that bucket more. But I think that would quickly become very unfulfilling, just like you said, because there's no challenge, there's no growth, there's no pursuit of more. So for me, my fishing is my life's mission. Like what I am aiming to do that I hold like sacred inside of myself that gets me out of bed in the morning is my fishing. Sometimes it's building a business. Sometimes it's doing this podcast. Sometimes it's writing a book. But all of that is the fishing for me because it's like that's the purpose. That's the reason I exist. That's why I do what I do. And that to me is enough of a challenge and enough of a pursuit of like, Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot as well, right? I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson and his ideas around meaning, where he talks about like, pick up some responsibility and put some weight on your shoulders. Like that's what creates meaning in life, not sitting around doing nothing. So that is I think that the Mexican Fisherman is a minute and a half story that has like some deeply profound meaning to it. But what it is missing for me is why? What are you really doing? Are you really supposed to sit around and just have this dream life? What's the more? What's your potential? Is this person living out his potential fully by just siestas and fishing? I don't think so. And I think what makes life meaningful is knowing that before you die, you tried and you really put it all out there and you at least attempted to reach your potential. That's what it is for me.
I mean, Eric, I think you nailed it, because like in the parable, the fisherman is still working a little bit every day. He's not grinding 12 hours a day, but he's still working every day. But the rest of his time is spent on his relationships with his wife and his friends, and maybe that's what will be more meaningful in the end. It's not like he's building something great. And, all of us, I think Naval mentions this, like all of our names within 4 generations you die. He says you die twice. You die once when you physically leave this earth, and you die the last time your name is ever mentioned, which for most people, no matter how famous you are, might be 4 generations from now, unless you're, Alexander the Great, right? Like that will happen. So, there is this kind of like false goal of like, some massive legacy that exists, in perpetuity. So what are we doing? And I think,
which then is kind of like a reason to not
well, I'm
do
also,
so much.
I'm also guessing that this fisherman, I don't know if he said it explicitly, but I'm guessing this fisherman also enjoys fishing. Like
Yeah.
Even when he's doing it for a living, catching 4 yellowfin, like he's probably having a good time doing that. And I think we all share that
Totally.
aspect. Like we do what we like to make money.
I was going to ask Steven, did he enjoy farming tokens right before he got here?
No.
Steven, are you okay?
Staring at charts and 2 a.m. in bed?
No.
But Steven, you have an interesting take on this, right? You've talked before about how this is a temporary time in your life where you're like, I have some goals and I want to meet those goals, and I also feel that the timing is perfect. I want to strike this opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a weird situation for me. Like 16 years ago, I can't believe it was 16 years ago, Jesus Christ. But 16 years ago when I had my only real quote unquote job as a trader at Bridgewater, I mean, I remember like 6 months into the job, like I hated my life. Like I hated my life. I was so depressed. And I didn't really understand why. Like I had this great job. I only worked like 45 hours a week.
This is Ray
50
Dalio's firm.
hours a
Just
week.
'cause some people may not make the connection between Bridgewater.
Yeah, I was making like 150 grand a year first year out of college.
Dude, we have the same story, like me and Google.
The office was in like the woods, surrounded by this stream and this peaceful area of Westport. It was like really like should have been like a dream for most people, and like but like for me, I felt like miserable. Like it started to like when I would wake up and I was like, okay, here I go again. I gotta make some coffee and then get in my car and drive to work, and I'm gonna go back and I have to do this every day. I remember I took like a day off to play a poker tournament at Foxwoods, and I won it, and it was like,
As you do.
Nice.
but and the next day I played again, and I was playing like 1-2 no limit, like $200 on the table. And I remember like thinking when I was playing that game, I was like, wow, I would just rather do this. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's like crazy. Like I would rather just play this 1-2 no limit game and I'd probably honestly kill myself if I did that for like a year, But at the time I was just like so yearning to like not go back into the office. And then I kind of realized like at that point, like the most important thing for me was to like have freedom. And like for me, like my degree of freedom is like way larger than most people's need for freedom. And I made up my mind to quit. And I basically went to work and I told him he's going to leave in like a few weeks or whatever. And they were like,
hey,
well,
listen up, Ray.
they were just like, well, you know, if you don't want to be here anymore, you can just leave now. And I was like, oh. And that was it. I left and I drove
2
home.
week notices make no sense.
Yeah, but like I remember driving home and I felt so good. I felt like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders. And, you know, for the last like decade and a half, like I've basically had just complete freedom to do whatever I want. And so I feel like torn because I feel like I'm partly already like living the parable, but I'm like not entirely there yet. But to me that story resonates with me because that is everything. Like that man he's like kind of truly free in a way.
Yeah. Well said.
I don't know if I said anything of significance there, but
no, I think for me, the starting point, another great parable, or it's not even a parable, but like just a question or example. The starting point for me with Alan Watts was with one question. I was introduced to this one talk. You can listen to it. It's like 3 minutes long on YouTube. And from there, I haven't looked back. I don't even know how many hours of Alan I've consumed, but it started with one question. What would you do if money were no object? And it's such a simple question, but I bring this up to people and to myself all the time. It's like, it's my filter question. And if I can align my life with that question and that the truth, the answer that is true behind that question, then I think I'm being the Mexican fisherman. And so, like, there is life and there is paying bills and there are certain things that we just have to do. There's a lot of people hear this kind of stuff, by the way, just to like actually address, like people say, well, guys, you know, Armand, like, you're not in my position. You don't have 3 kids. You don't have these bills, and I don't have what you have. I didn't meet the people you've met. I didn't have the job experience you've had to get to the point to make the money you have. So that I say, absolutely. Like, that's completely true. It's difficult to project and say like that your worldly issues are not real. They are real. They're real circumstances, but there still are ways to make small adjustments to find more joy. Basically, it's like a lot of people play this, and this is almost become politicized. By the way, this idea of this statement that I'm making right now, where it's like it's almost become this thing where, like, on the right, I don't know how I got into politics, but it's become that. So you almost have to address it. On the right, there's this issue with people saying, like, don't be a victim. Pick yourself up by the bootstraps. You can change your life. You have the authority, the autonomy, the agency to make yourself something in this country or whatever country you live in. And then it's become popular on the left to say, but no, I'm being held down by the system. I'm a victim. Both of those are true.
Totally. Okay, so this conversation helped me sort of isolate what I actually care about, who I am. Mm-hmm. But I actually want to tee up Nick here. So, like, I think where I'm at is pretty clear. I am a man of leisure, mm-hmm. and I'm okay. Like, if I had all the money in the world, I'd be fine. Just doing what I enjoy, which is, like, you guys know me. I can go play golf and hang out with you guys and do whatever. I'd be fine. But for Nick, I'm very interested in your response to this, because knowing you, you're a guy whose version of fishing actually looks a lot like the MBA from Harvard's version of building.
Right.
So I'm actually curious to how you respond to this, because like how do you even play that? Yeah,
I mean, listen, I think on the parable itself, I think the broader lesson is like everyone who listens to it, to some extent, you're already there. Like, there's gotta be a little sliver, a silver lining of like your current life in which you're already there. And maybe that's like the lesson. Cause like the biggest loophole you don't want to get stuck in is where you don't realize that you're already there. You're doing the things that you would already do. or some of them that you already do. And yeah, you work a little during the day, but like you already are living the life that you may live. And it may not be, 100% of your life, but I think there's some part of it. And to your point, what I like to do is build businesses. It's fun. It's like, a big puzzle piece, a 20,000 piece puzzle, and you have to solve it. And what I've realized also with the help of hours and hours of therapy is like, it also does provide this like huge dopamine, response, particularly from, it kind of falls in this quadrant of high urgency, high importance, where in a business, when you have employees and you have revenue and expenses, there always is every day at least one thing that's like super high urgency, and maybe another thing that's like maybe not urgent but super important. And so it kind of provides, like TikTok, this little engine of dopamine where like every day something requires like immediate attention, and some people get that rush starting businesses. Some people do that getting extreme sports like MMA or surfing or whatever it may be. And I've realized that like I do have a little addiction to like starting new ideas, because if you see a problem or an opportunity, it's like, and Armand knows this, I have a backlog of like ideas, and sometimes I'm like, I'm never going to get to them. So like, let's just shove these ideas out and see if anyone wants to take hold of them.
I took one.
Yeah.
Man, I want one of these.
Yeah, change the world, boys.
There's a lot more if you want them.
But I will say I did this, so every quarter I have a quarterly goal sheet. I've been doing it for over 10 years. So I can go back to this quarterly goal sheet for back to 10 years, and it has this very simple structure. It's like, what's the outcome you want? If you don't hit it, what's the immense, immeasurable pain you'll experience if you don't hit it? What's the immense, immeasurable pleasure if you do hit it? And then what's your massive action plan for this quarter? It's more focused on the system of doing things to create the result. Anyway, it's ordered by like health and then like your mental health and your relationships and your active businesses and investing, things like that. But I added one category this quarter, and it was very different and it's very relevant to this one, and it's time.
Ooh.
Like, because you can accomplish all these goals, but maybe one of the most important ways, how do you want to spend your time? And that's something I haven't, focused on. And so I've added that as a goal. Like, you have so many hours in the day, in the week, in the month, and how do you, maybe when you look back on your life, or maybe even like going forward, how do you want to spend those hours? Do you want it playing golf with leisure? Do you want it creating art? Do you want it focusing on business? And I kind of have this like, ever since I was young, like this guiding light, which has been the responsibility of providing for your immediate family, right? That has always been my thing. And, the real goal is to provide a sustainable passive way of providing for your family, and not the way in which you actively either take a job or start a business, that income, because that can come and go as like, as you live longer and experience economies and jobs go through cycles, right? So like, what's the best way to get to passive income to provide for your family beyond yourself? Maybe more for your family first than yourself first. And so, yeah, starting those businesses has been a means to an end to always hit that passive income goal. Mm-hmm. And we haven't talked about a lot on this podcast.
Which we need to.
Yeah, and we certainly will talk about it in one of the investing podcasts. But, one of my favorites is like multifamily real estate. We talked a little about asset allocation in the Discord. I put them there for everyone to see in the Discord, and I think it's one of the best ways to accumulate wealth over a long period of time and provide passive income. So I guess that's been my like driving goal, and I'm almost there. I'm not there yet, but like it requires more cash and more wealth to do it. And when you really back it out, if your standard is, I don't want to like fund my life and my family's life with the money I make every day through my active activities, I want it through my passive activities. Well, it's actually quite a lot of money. And so you need to kind of keep grinding and work towards it. But, there's also this balance of, well, how do I want to spend my time? So I'm kind of exploring this, as we talk about this. But I think the real reason is these businesses are potentially a means to an end, but also fun. And I have the blessing of being able to do it with my friends. Like every business I've had, whether they've started off as friends or start off as business partners and turn into friends, or now I have the luxury of like partnering with my friends, and we have a strong enough relationship, and most people are emotionally aware enough to be like, we're getting into business together as friends. And so that's really fun. I get to go to an office, see my friends, do some work, or partner with my friends. And I think that's fun as well. And I would probably, we talk about this idea with one of my business partners, like we're always going to tinker. And we even joke like, well, tinkering means maybe hiring a developer. And then if it does well, maybe we can grow it a little more. And then you end up with 2 developers, and then you end up with like, and it grows from there. And it's like this loop that you recognize you're in, and you realize it's fun, and it does create stress at times. But I think, I don't know, that's how I've kind of like thought about it. But the first goal is like being able to provide in a passive way for like immediate family members the most. And I don't know, maybe that'll change over time once that goal's hit.
I mean, you're also a legit artist. So like you've been carving out more and more time for art on top of like you're kind of the MBA and the Fisherman in a lot of ways. Like there's a good balance. I think a lot of it is like for a while balance became this like overrated meme, the work-life balance. But I do think that balance to a certain degree is really important. Or the way I view it now personally is like with boundaries. I have clear boundaries. I have boundaries with the phone now. I have boundaries with social media. I have boundaries with time that I put into work. And I think that's a really important component. But for you, like you literally are like carving more and more time each week to create art outside of all the operating of businesses.
I found a new perspective on balance, and it's about identity. So imagine that your identity from, let's say, 20 years old has been...
My favorite topic, by the way.
I'm a successful entrepreneur, right? And that's your identity. And that's everything you put out to the world. Well, being an entrepreneur for a long time, you don't always have wins. In fact, you have massive, just fall on your face failures, and then you just go and do it again. But, for most people, when that one thing is the sole thing about you make your identity about, your psyche can crack.
You're so right.
And it's very vulnerable. So, the balance part of me is not about balance. It's like, okay, when you look at your identity as looking introspectively on yourself, you want to realize that like, okay, I'm not just an entrepreneur. I'm not just an investor. I'm not just into crypto or whatever it may be. I'm a son. I'm a boyfriend. I'm a brother. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an artist. And like when you take that view on yourself, when one thing goes wrong, it's like, okay, it's like my identity didn't crack and fall. And some people, a lot of people, and most publicly facing people, I'm a rich individual. I'm wealthy. Well, we've seen many times when, and maybe not, it's not public facing, but behind the scenes, we know that person is not so wealthy anymore, not so rich. And I think it provides like a psychological vulnerability that you can prevent. And some people call it balance, but I think it's more.
Dude, you're nailing it. I view it as like values, but identity is the same thing. And I think you've been reading Psycho-Cybernetics, right?
Yeah, like a lot of this conversation has like made me think more about myself, and we're all coming from different starting points too, like everybody else. Like something I've identified, I mean, it doesn't take much to identify, but like I grew up with enough. I had the privilege of growing up wealthy, and then like that burning desire to like give back to the family or something might not be so important for me as it is to Nick. But my thing is more of like a curiosity that's always keeping me going, which maybe it's not better or worse. It's what keeps me interested. And like these talks are like, they get me excited, and like crypto is getting me excited on like the curiosity factor on like how to best utilize the wealth that I grew up with. Or, like we're talking about stablecoin yields at 19%. Like there might not be a better game in town. And like that's interesting to me. I want to learn all about it. I want to dig deeper on things. So I don't know if it's like everyone has their burning desire that pushes them to maybe be more Harvard MBA, but at the end of the day, I'm have the privilege of being able to fish sort of from the start.
I mean, that's an interesting point you bring up. I'm definitely more like Nick because I didn't really grow up with any money, so I had like a complex for sure, especially when I was younger. I think balance too is sort of like it's not something that you should strive for, I think, equally through all parts of your life. Like right. I think when I look back on my life, I think I largely lived it correctly, in that when I was in my 20s, like especially my young 20s, I had kind of like an imbalanced life. I really focused a lot on making money, and I took like a shit ton of very aggressive risks, which I think is correct. I think like, especially like if you're a male, like when you are like 21 to 23, or you're kind of useless, right? Like you've left college, right? You're not like a cool senior anymore. So now when you go to the bars, like you're just like the biggest loser in there because everybody else is like older and you're
Just
like
shout
the young
out to
guy
our 22-year-old listeners, like
and most of the stuff
that's
you
Steven
do,
talking.
You're a loser. Shout out to you.
It gets better.
most of the stuff
There you
you
go.
do,
Gets
chasing
better.
girls and everything anyway, is gonna end up being like a huge mistake that you'll regret, right? So it's like kind of like the perfect time in your life to just obsessively work, right?
Are we going to talk about the perpetual rug at one point?
One day.
One
Oh,
day we'll
God.
talk about the perpetual rug.
So good.
Yeah, like I think my biggest mistake in my early 20s was that I didn't actually work enough, even though I was kind of like
I think you're
one-track
right.
mind. Like I had a
Same.
year when I was playing poker and I was making so much money, and like I did the Mexican fisherman thing. I was like, oh, this is enough, you know. Why am I doing all this work? Oh, it's so I can like take trips and watch TV and only work like 10 hours a week, or or whatever. And that is really stupid because I had like this like really good opportunity and I should have just milked it for all it was worth when I was just living in a random apartment in
Yeah.
Boston and young and wasn't really doing anything anyway. That was a big mistake. Now that I'm older, I'm like trying to downshift, and I'm kind of doing the Nick thing in a way, because like he's got art and like I've like kind of rediscovered music, and I make that like a big part of my day, you
Yep.
know. But yeah, I think you should definitely go hard when you're younger, and but a lot of people don't know how to like take their foot off the gas. I've observed, and that parable is about remembering why you wanted to make the money in the first place. I think people just get on a hamster wheel after a while, and they just start like make money.
I'll be honest, some of my like favorite memories, of like early to mid 20s were the like working 17 hours a day memories, where like, back up against the wall, me and my business partner put everything we had, like literally took the bank account, transferred over into the business bank account and be like, okay, no going back. And we didn't hang out once. I'm talking imagine 104 weekends where you don't go out. You don't do anything.
I remember this. You're not making this up.
Yeah, and you just people over like on the 25th weekend, they're like, cool, we're not going to invite them out anymore. Like they're just not going to come out. And we worked 7 days in a row, and we worked out of a little side, room of his house, and me, him, and a developer for like 2 straight years. And it was like I'm so sad because I only have 2 pictures from that time in our life, but I really appreciate those times where you work so hard and it actually did pay off, and you're like staying up till 3 a.m. because you're working with overseas people, and you just waiting for that one Skype message to like push things just a little bit further. And so I will say, like, if you do have that time, if you are in that stage of life, like it is super rewarding, whether it turns out good financially or not, to like go through those things together at a young age when you can. Because let's face it, like none of us have kids, but like we're not going to be able to take that risk if and when we we have kids. And so take that now, and whether it turns out good or financially or not, it will definitely create some like crazy memories. And
how do you then pivot? Because as we advance in our careers and stuff, and we get closer to our number or what have you, our level of wealth that would be sufficient, like how do we pivot to be like, okay, I don't have to take massive risk. I can sort of take my foot off the gas, to Steven's point, like, and what does that even look like? Can we even do it? Like, can you guys dial it down? Can Steven stop stressing so much? Can Nick stop building businesses? Can you maybe like stop fucking doing all your projects? Like, can you actually do this stuff, or is this all just like us talking about it?
But that's why we like DeFi so much, because like never have you been able to take a stable coin, and yes, we talked about risks of stable coins 2 episodes ago, but like never have you been able to yield 19%. So that calculation of what's your number in terms of the grand number, the net worth number you have, and also the passive income number, like this like risk return ratio has never been greater in your favor. And so I think that's why we like talking about DeFi so much, because maybe it truly lowers that threshold of like, okay, now I can create enough passive income, quote unquote passive, right? We all know that's like, you know, a varying term, but still, I think, you know, you can have the opportunity, the optionality to tone it down, because we have these like new financial instruments to aid us in that effort. Maybe.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's
Well,
true.
thank you for bringing it back around with the
I think that's
DeFi
true.
drop.
I think that's true. But man, like we've also traveled the world. We've seen people. Like I went to the Amazon rainforest. There's people living in the jungle, and those guys have way less than whatever we're talking about with our DeFi yields and everything, and they're happy as a clam.
Yeah, they really are. I know for me, for example, I can only speak for myself. Like I've done well, but in terms of just like if I was straight up just chasing a number, I would have been at that number years ago if I didn't have this huge value for freedom and travel. I've spent not just time, but the amount of money I've spent traveling the world is insane. Like a lot of young people are taught to make sacrifices, to live simple, to not eat out, to just accumulate money, shove it away, save their money, and create their wealth. I've done that, but like probably spent 10 times more than I should have compared to that guy. And so what I've done is along the way, because of my identity, like I have this identity as like a wanderlust wonder junkie. Like that's in my head, like that I'm a world traveler. And I've gone to Japan 4 times. And I've actually been to 46 countries, but yet I've been to Japan 4 times. So it's like, I have that as a value. It's something that I need. It's something that makes me feel alive. It's something that, and everyone has their version of that, whether it's tennis or piano or painting and art. Like you've taken away from like, I don't think any of us are like hardcore extremists, even though I think we sometimes look at like maybe Nick, he's always building businesses, or maybe Steven is like DeFiing all day long, or maybe Armand has too many projects. But like actually all of us have like a decent amount of like this other side of our identity that I think is part of the Fisherman parable, if that makes sense.
I think I like the idea that you can sacrifice on both sides. Like you prodigiously left a cushy job in your younger days to go travel. That's like a sacrifice the other direction.
Yeah, right.
Like you sacrifice the number to go live.
Yeah, like I didn't make money for like 2.5 years, like not even close to what I was making at Google. You know, and it took me 2.5 years to make the money I was making at Google. But that was fine with me because I was like playing this long game of like, what would I do if money were no object? What would I truly do? Yeah, it might come with some suffering. Might come with like, I have to develop mastery at something, you know?
I have a question because, and maybe we can kind of finish off with this question because I kind of struggle with this a lot. Like, you know, when I looked at values in life, freedom has always been like, that's like the ultimate value. And like you optimize for freedom and you work towards freedom. Like you work to helpfully create more optionality in your life. But like kind of, and maybe it's just as you get older in life, like is optionality this like false goal that you create for yourself? Because you know, one of the things I look is like, wow, when you travel, you realize there's so many different ways to live life. Like,
Right.
and you see people in different countries living life in a completely different way than you do, which most of the time requires a lot less than you have or need to make when you live here in the States. And so you're like, wow, there's all these options, but like in reality, are you going to take all those options? And so is freedom this false goal, this like false peak that you're like gunning for? And I don't have the answer. I ask myself the question a lot and I struggle with, is freedom the real goal? Or should you just kind of be like, this is what I'm going to do?
It's a great point.
Freedom is the goal, but it can be defined many ways.
But I think I just made the analogy because we're also focused on longevity, right? Like extending life. Extending life is basically the same thing, like giving you more optionality. But then you also have to live today and like enjoy, squeeze the life out of like today, this moment, and like near term, right? Like you want to live in the near term as well, man. And if you just sacrifice all the near term to push it all out to the end, like okay, so when you're 100 years old, you can do whatever you want, but like what fun is that? As we sit here and drink and smoke with each other, like we're clearly making that choice in real time.
I was talking to someone earlier today, and I was expressing like a fear that I have about having like kids, right? That I have always had, and I was like, I'm worried. I've always been worried it's going to take away my freedom because I like to get on a plane and
Great
go
example.
somewhere.
Yeah.
And she's a mentor of mine, and she basically said, she was like, I know you, and your definition of freedom is going to evolve. You're going to experience bliss with this kid one day. Like, freedom is inside. It's not like this thing where I have to be able to get on a plane and that's what freedom equals. I was like, okay, cheesy answer. But then I thought about it. And I was like, that's totally true. Like, you can lose yourself in something that creates like bliss, ecstasy, joy, and that's pure freedom. And if you're choosing to do that and you like it and enjoy doing that, then it can be an amazing thing. And so like, no one's forcing me to have the kid. If I'm just one of those people, I'm like, I'm just not someone who wants to be a dad. That's different.
Right.
But if I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. I just have fears. But those fears are silly is what I'm starting to realize. Like, I'm going to have an amazing time. I'm going to really enjoy being a dad one day. I know that now. And I was always like terrified of that.
You're going to be a great dad.
Thanks, man. Wow. You are too.
And, I think I've
Love bubble.
found over time that there is some freedom and commitment. And commitment involves cutting off the other options. You
True.
know, so there is freedom in that, like whether it's getting in a long-term relationship, whether it's deciding to have kids, whether it's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna like hold ETH and stake it and validate and earn some yield, and that's what I'm gonna do. And I have, and then there's freedom in that, and like deciding to commit to like a plan or a strategy, and yeah, kind of like learning that over time that there's freedom within that. It's hard to realize when you're on the other side of it that you're cutting off all these options, but there is something on the other side.
Hell yeah.
Good talk, boys.
Very good. That was good.
Shout
it was
out
a good
to-
little bath.
Shout out to Liquidiate for
Yeah.
ushering this conversation
Totally.
in our Discord.
Totally. We should say, if you guys have topics that you want us to discuss, let us know. Throw them in the Discord. We're listening. That was great. See you guys next time. Peace. One love.
Love you
Peace.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.